I was looking around for a Christmas present for Chris. I want him to get the Dune graphic novel that's coming out because I know he doesn't really like to read so much as he likes to look at the pictures.
Ron, I love both. I love reading and I love pictures almost equally. And yeah, I would fucking
Much
love
like children.
that graphic novel.
Yes. Because I know he gets tired of chapter books. But,
do you ever
Chris,
notice if you give him a biography, he just goes to that middle section where all the photos are, and he flips through it and then goes, that was a good book.
His favorite biographies are fiction writers. I mean, sci-fi fiction writers. Who was the guy that I heard you do the interview with, Chris, that it was the most serious I've ever heard Chris Stanley?
That was Matt Ruff, who wrote Lovecraft Country, among many other lovely books.
Now, I have never heard of
like
this
that.
book, right? Never heard of it before. And I went there, and Chris was so fucking serious with this guy. And then I almost heard, like, the timbre of his voice had a thing of excitement going on that I'm not used to him having. And it was so fucking cute.
That's so sweet.
And Chris, his two favorite that you like fantasy and you like sci-fi.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference?
I see. As a child, it was probably fantasy. As an adult, more sci-fi. But I still love fantasy so much because it like reminds me of the best times of my childhood. Reading fantasy novels.
So sad. Fucking nerd. Now, here's the thing. I get sci-fi. I don't understand fantasy even slightly. Like, I don't know how you could act like somebody is magic or somebody can do these things. Like, at least with sci-fi, you have to say technology has gone this far, and how does that now? How does that fuck with the human condition? Does it make us more human? Does it make us less human? With fantasy, you're just like, oh, this guy has wings in his fucking heels. And you're like, what?
That sounds pretty cool.
And then he has magic dust to make people do. I don't get it.
I was obsessed with it as a child. I was obsessed with like occult stuff. Like, well, man, what if magic's real and it's the occult? And that just led to me reading fantasy novel after fantasy novel.
I feel like that if I was your dad, I would have slapped you when I saw you doing that.
He didn't understand it at all. He did not.
No, of course
fucking
he
get
doesn't.
the piles of fucking fantasy books I would take out to the library.
All right. No, you were saying that you were going to put your top 10 fantasy books out, and then we could ask you about these. Do you remember what the first book, that fantasy book that you read?
Yes, and it is on the list. Well, the author's on the list, but yes.
All right. We'll let you start your list. Count us down. And Gail, and anybody from the show, if you've read any of these books, feel free to jump in. I'm going to tell you, without even hearing about this, I've read 0 of these books. I know it. All right, give us number 10, Chris.
All right, so this is my magical roadmap to the lands of high fantasy. Number 10.
Wait, just go back and let us know how uncool you are by saying what you are calling your list.
This is my magical roadmap to the lands of high fantasy.
Not only don't I like those books, I almost didn't make it through this. All right, 10.
Number 10. This is a newer book. It actually was adapted to a TV show a few years ago on Sci-Fi Network. It's Lev Grossman's The Magician's Trilogy. Has anyone heard of this? It was just The Magicians on Sci-Fi. Now, this is
I heard of the show. I never watched it, but I didn't even know that it was a book. I didn't know that's where that came from.
I'm going to say this. I haven't even heard of the network.
Sci-Fi. So, you know Harry Potter, right? You know how they went to magic school?
Yes.
Yeah.
As like
Hogwarts.
grade school? Think of this as, in this reality, magic is real, and people go to magic college as opposed to magic like grade school. And this is the story of a boy's or a young adult's journey through magic college. And he finds out that a book he read as a child, which was a fantasy novel he read as a child in the story, actually is real, and he has to fight that alternate world.
Now, you've read all 3 of the books?
Yes.
And so you're not like, oh my God, this is so stupid. You're like enjoying it, and you want to know what happens next.
I'm in rapture. It's more adult than Harry Potter because I wasn't a big fan.
Does that mean
Harry
there's like sexy stuff in it? Like, do they have adult content?
Yeah, because they're in college, Gail. So sex is going to come up, boozing's going to come up.
Magic boost?
It's a wonderful trilogy.
The only reason I know that it existed, the show existed, and I haven't seen it, is because it stars Jason Ralph, my friend from SUNY Purchase. He's done a lot of things. He's also married to Rachel Brosnahan.
Oh, he was in that short film that you directed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then he also produced a play that I acted in, and he and I knew each other through college.
Well, good luck to him. Let him know the good news that he's part of the magical roadmap.
To the lands of high fantasy.
Way to go, Jason.
It's stunning that such a new project could already come into the top 10. Normally takes years.
Shocking, I know.
No, I never heard of any of this. I don't understand why it would be considered entertaining.
Ron, give it a try.
I can't, Chris. All right, give us number 9.
All right, maybe this will pique your interest. This is R.A. Salvatore's The Dark Elf trilogy. It tells the story of a dark elf, within the world, a drow, called Drizzt Do'Urden, who is a master assassin and weaponsmith who rejects his dark elf lineage because they're kind of like dicks. They're oppressive to all the other races in their land, and then he leaves there. And this is his essentially his journey to become a better dark elf. And he's a fantasy fucking classic character, Drizzt Do'Urden.
Why does he have such a stupid name? Why can't his name be Frank the Dark Elf?
Ron, I don't name the Dark Elf people. I mean, this is just their culture.
Wow, this is stunning.
Never heard of it.
There's Gail, in fantasy circles, this is considered a classic. There's also the Spider Queen that the elves are fucking basically under, and they play up to. But Drizzt doesn't want anything to do with that. He's getting the fuck out of town. Into the Underdark would be the land outside the Dark Elves realm.
So silly.
Well, you're silly.
I love it. I mean, look, I love it. It sounds great. I actually am interested.
I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I don't, not only would I not want to read it, I don't think I could. I don't feel like my mind would go to the place. I just can't.
Well, their capital city is Menzoberranzan. That's where Drizzt Do'Urden lives. And, eventually lives at first, and then he leaves after he leaves Weaponsmith College. Because initially he was going to be a wizard, but then they said, no, you're too good with a fucking sword, bro, and then you're going to be a weapon master.
My question, this has never been made into a movie. You've only read the books?
Just the books. I think there's some comic books made of it, but it might have been optioned, but no, it's never been on screen.
Now, this is what I'm curious about, because you're saying it with such confidence. How do you know that you're pronouncing these names correctly? I know this feeling from The Legend of Zelda. I used to play a video game where they didn't actually speak during it, and then later I would talk to someone who played the game, and they're like, why are you mispronouncing all these characters?
Look, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty positive it's Drizzt Do'Urden.
I don't understand why they're not just using Randy Quaid to make all these movies.
Perfect. As a Driznit? As a dark elf like Driznit?
Or Drow.
I gotta admit, this one sounds worse than the other. The other one at least seems like it's somewhat connected to reality.
Yeah. I like the
but this one is just, yeah.
And the magicians, they are human, and it is like the real world, sort of, but just magic is real. This is just a totally different planet.
Okay.
All right, let's go to the next one.
All All right, next. This is a beloved series by one Stephen King, the Dark Tower series, specifically the first book of the series, The Gunslinger. It's about Roland Deschain. Think of this as if, let's say, ancient knights were cowboys. So, like, it's an ancient feudal society, but there's cowboys instead of knights, and he is the last gunslinger on his planet, and he's on a chase to find this evil individual. This was turned into a movie with Matthew McConaughey and Idris Elba. And I'm not a fan of Stephen King's writing usually, but this, I believe, is his best work.
Well, here's the thing about Stephen King. I just had this conversation with somebody about him yesterday. He really doesn't seem to be stuck in any one of these weird genres. Like, he's able to move in and out of these horror / fantasy / sci-fi things. It's probably why he could just keep pumping this shit out. And I'm sure it's because he read something else and then just made something similar to it.
Well, I'll tell you, Roland Deschain is a fucking cool character. I mean, he's a badass, like Clint Eastwood type. You know what I'm saying? And then he also goes through a multiverse chasing the Man in Black, who is his nemesis, and he's trying to get to the Dark Tower to basically get the Man in Black and the Crimson King.
Now, how is the movie, Chris?
I didn't watch it. I just read terrible reviews of it. I was kind of interested when it came out, but then I read the reviews. I was like, I don't want to ruin the source material.
I will say this, without even knowing either, I bet I would like the movie more than the book because I would have to do less. Yes. All right, jump back in. This is really embarrassing.
Number 7 on my magical
Oh my God,
roadmap
we're only at 7.
to the lands of high fantasy. Number 7, T.H. White's The Once and Future King. This was the Sword and the Stone. This was this guy wrote in the 50s about young King Arthur, and this was the story of King Arthur and Merlin. And there was about like 3 or 4 books condensed into one book, and it's the story we all know of King Arthur.
Well, I was a big fan of the Sword and the Stone Disney movie as a child, so I guess
is it the same?
Going for it.
It's the same, and then like it ends right before King Arthur is supposed to fight his son Mordred, I believe. Very good, and it's classic. I thought I have some new stuff on here, but I feel like I have to pay homage to the classics, Ron.
It says, I'm trying to, because now I'm looking at your chicken scratch that you've put this up for. For a guy who enjoys reading, your stuff is not legible. These books are really Chris's white supremacy novels.
No.
As John says this, as far as we know, Chris could be making up the plots of these books. There's no doubt. Look, Gail, in a bookstore, nothing is as big as the fantasy fucking part. And that's because everybody who reads one of these rightfully thinks I could just write one. These people who write this are as bad as me, the reader.
Because you just have to make it up. That's why you get to make up all the rules. So, of course.
No logic whatsoever.
Children play fantasy games. Because they can make it up. I just have a couple questions about this picture. One, why is there a Star of David in your doodles?
And that meant to be a pentagram.
That's not a pentagram. That's a Star of David. And then why does your wizard have a boner? That's it.
I wanted to show, that he was very excited to fight that dragon. Maybe that's where his power comes from. I don't know. I just felt I needed to do that.
I honestly can't even read the fucking things. We may have to have you type these up at some point.
No
All right,
problem.
go ahead. Into the next one. Make it less boring.
If you read the stories, you would not be bored for a second. Number 6. This is one I read in my younger years that was beloved by me. This is the Belgariad by David Eddings. It tells a story. It's a coming-of-age story where this child is the chosen one, and he's taken in by Belgariad the sorcerer and his daughter Polgara the sorceress, and to fight Torak, the evil god. And it goes over many books. Belgariad and Polgara also both get their own books telling their story, because Belgariad essentially has lived forever. He's an ageless wizard, much like a Gandalf type, if you will.
I'm sorry, I stopped paying attention. Something about Gandalf?
No, not Gandalf. It's Belgariad the sorcerer.
I swear to God, you know what you make me feel like right now is a weekend dad, where I have to go pick up my nerd son. I'm driving him over to some cosplay thing, and he's trying to tell me why he's excited about it.
Look, this story fucking tells you the journey that Garion goes to eventually become king, to fight Torak, to smite him down, and his relationships with Belgariad and Polgara. It's a lovely series that I urge everyone to read, especially for the younger kids.
Why does it sound like each one of these could be a movie starring Jack Black? And why is it a coming-of-age story? That's what I didn't understand.
That's the sad part. Oh, okay.
Coming of age. Moving on to number 5. This also is a newer book. It was adapted into a TV show. This is Neil Gaiman's American Gods. Have you guys seen this or heard of it?
I watched the first season, I believe, of American Gods. It was fucking nutty.
So the story
I didn't see it, but I know it exists.
Is this a graphic novel or?
This was just a novel. This is just a novel.
Okay.
He might have turned it into a graphic novel, but I read it as the book, which is how it originally came out. So this is about this dude, Shadow, who becomes a bodyguard, who gets hired as a bodyguard for this guy, Mr. Wednesday, who is actually Odin. And so this tells the story of a war of the older gods, like your Odins, your Lokis, like the gods from various cultures that are kind of forgotten, against New Age gods, like the god of technology, the god of media, the god of like globalization. So it's their struggle against each other, and Shadow, the bodyguard to Odin, is stuck in the middle of this. It's a fantastic book, right on a flight.
Now, the way that I was watching it in the first season of the TV show, it was almost like Tinkerbell, where you had to believe in them to give them strength, Gail.
Clap.
It was
clap if you want the gods to have strength.
Babyish. So the problem with Odin was people were forgetting about him, so he didn't exist. Am I correct when I say that, Chris?
Ron, you are 100% correct. Explained beautifully. No, it was great.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Number 4 on the magical roadmap to the lands of high fantasy, Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series. Have you guys heard of this?
Is it a wheel of cheese? Because that's delicious.
No, it's the Wheel of Time. This was a 14-book series. The author actually died before he finished it, so they had to bring in another author to finish the last 2 books.
Let me ask you, did he die of boredom?
No, but I will preface this pick. It's a fantastic series with a great ending novel. There are a couple novels in there where he goes on for hundreds of pages describing tapestries. Kind of boring, but there's plenty of good stuff around it. This tells the story of Randall Thor, who is in this world, men and women can perform magic, but the source that men pull their power from was tainted. So if men try to use magic, they go fucking crazy. And so if there's any men born who could do magic, the female wizards like fucking essentially neuter them. Like, you can't fucking use magic, and they do some magic shit. They can't use magic anymore. But Randall Thor is the reincarnation of the Chosen One, and he can harness magic, and he becomes incredibly powerful and wages a war against essentially the Dark One, because the Wheel of Time is a reference to this has happened over and over and over again.
How do you remember all this shit? Like, I accept that you read all of these, but then how do you remember all of each nonsense that goes into each book?
The saddest thing is that you hear him getting more and more excited. as if we're on this journey through magic with him, and we're not.
Now, can I just ask? We're on what, number 4 on your list now?
This is number 4.
Okay, so my question is: are these fantasy books for adults or for children? Like, I've noticed so far there's some classics missing, and I'm wondering if they're coming in the beginning, or do I only know ones for kids because those are the fantasy books I read? That's when I read fantasy when I was a young child.
I would say some of these are for fantasy, but mostly the ones on this list, I'm trending towards adults should read them. Like the Belgariad, I'd say that's for kids, and adults can enjoy it too. The Magician, probably more for your older kids. The Dark Tower, adult. The Dark Elf trilogy, probably, your tweens. Murder Gods, adult.
Tweens.
Right.
So these are your favorite books. A lot of them are for tweens. Okay.
A lot of people writing in about this. Lou says, my fantasies have never included someone named Merlin. I would so much rather be listening to Lou's fantasies right now than Chris Stanley's.
I want to add one more thing about the Wheel of Time series. Now, the rights were bought for the book, and the company that held the rights had to make something with them before they lost them. So they made a really horrible pilot starring Billy Zane that's tremendously bad. That's worth checking out on YouTube.
Yeah. I mean, nobody could make this stuff good.
I believe Amazon's making it, or HBO is now remaking it for another series. That should be quite good. I urge everyone to check it out.
Yes, everyone's following your urges, and we're so glad that you set the fantasy alarm for us all.
Number 3 on the Magical Roadmap to the Lands of High Fantasy, Michael Moorcock's The Weird of the White Wolf, the Elric of Melnibone saga. Now, this is a very tragic, dark series about a albino sorcerer who, due to inbreeding and...
Doo-doo. You said doo-doo.
Due to inbreeding, he's very weak. So he's a sorcerer. He can conjure demons. He deals with the Duke of Hell. He has to take drugs to make himself able to fucking run shit. And he has a sword called Stormbringer that when he kills someone, it sucks their soul and gives him strength. He is a tragic figure because he destroys everyone around him, and eventually, he's just left alone with Stormbringer. I know this might be
don't
giving
ruin
things
it
away.
for me, Chris. I was going to read this over the Thanksgiving break.
You already urged me.
It's worth going on the journey, even if you know how it ends.
Do albinos have white poop?
That I don't know, but I would guess yes, because he isn't human.
Chris, you make me want to start a fan fiction club where we can all write up our own things and then try to, get each other to help us as we move along.
I would love a fan fiction club. That's Michael Moorcock, The Weird of the White Wolf. That's for adults.
Michael Moore. Michael Moorcock?
Michael Moorcock.
Jesus Christ.
Here's number 2 on the list. And this is a super favorite of mine. This is Stephen R. Donaldson's The Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, the Unbeliever.
Now, hold on for a second, please.
Yes.
This is the longest fucking name and title yet. Why? Why would someone decide to name this? Before we even get into the dumb story.
Look, because, it's pretty straightforward. He's Thomas Covenant, he's an unbeliever, and these are the chronicles of his life and times.
And times. Don't forget the times, too.
I hope your chick hears you talking about this and leaves.
She's already packed up.
Oh, she'd have to.
So, this is the story behind Thomas Covenant. He is a regular man living in the regular world, except he's a leper. And his wife leaves him because he has leprosy.
Not the regular.
That's not a regular world at all.
So he has fucking leprosy. He's all pissed off. He's in town, and he gets run over by a police car. Now, when he
let's
comes,
hold on for a second. What town is he in?
I can't remember what he's in some shitty town.
Nazareth?
And he's going in from his house into town to get some shit for his leprosy, and then he gets run over. When he comes to, he shows up in the land, as it's called in the book, and it's this magical, weird place. And at one point, he gets healed. They heal him of his leprosy. And then it's also a point in the book is he's also impotent. So when he gets healed, he can achieve an erection again. And he ends up sexually assaulting a woman in the book.
Oh, my God.
In later
Why
books,
should we chronicle this man's life?
in later books,
Rapist.
the woman has the child, and the daughter actually, she's like, it's okay that you raped my mom because I don't know. So he also has a white
forgiving.
gold. It's very forgiving.
So this is the life and times of a leper rapist.
Yeah,
By the way, Harvey Weinstein optioned this from prison.
He also had a very mangled tiny penis.
and also he's missing some fingers and shit. So he also has a white.
By the way,
gold.
of course, this title would be number 2 on the list.
Well, I know he's not a great guy. He's an anti-hero of sorts, but he does end up saving the land. And in following books, he doesn't know if this is real or.
Are you saying
fantasy.
the land around the town?
No. He's in a magical land. He's transported to a different world.
Okay.
And so, and also, there's a white gold wedding ring, and white gold is magic in this land. So that's what gives him his magic powers, Thomas Covenant, the Unbeliever.
Now, Thomas, did he rape in the magical world or in the real world?
He raped in the magical world.
All right,
Because
so
he was
that's
able to
not
get a
even
boner again.
technically a crime since it doesn't exist.
I mean, does it exist or doesn't it? I don't know. You have to read the book to really figure
it
that
doesn't.
out.
I'll answer that right now. It doesn't exist.
But there's 2 trilogies in the series. I urge everyone to read them.
Stop urging us.
No, stop urging. You're constantly urging our life and times. I'm going to put this list out, Chris, as 10 things that are worse than COVID. 10 things that are worse than COVID. I urge you, please.
And now, number 1 on Chris Stanley's magical roadmap to the lands of high fantasy. Any book, any fantasy list would be remiss not to have J.R.R. Tolkien on it. The Lord of the Rings is the OG. It began all of this. All of these authors that I listed before this, they read Lord of the Rings and were inspired by it. You'd think I put Lord of the Rings as number 1, but I'm not, because I'm assuming anyone who's a fantasy fan would have read Lord of the Rings. I'm putting on, I believe, Tolkien's masterpiece, which was the book released after the Lord of the Rings. That was the Silmarillion, which tells the story of the first and second ages of Middle-earth, tells the stories of early man and the War of the Elves. Is that snoring? Because this is number 1. This is the best one in the book.
That's
one on the list.
That's actually a snoring elf.
Oh, that's cool.
His name is Dwarfius. Dwarfius.
It's a pretty cool name. But yes, Silmarillion is his masterpiece. I find it infinitely more interesting than Lord of the Rings, which I love. I love Lord of the Rings, but the Silmarillion, it is beloved by me.
You ever tell your girlfriend that you beloved her? Honey, this is hard for me to say, but I beloved you.
I misspoke there in my excitement.
You are excited. I can hear that.
All right. So I have a bone to pick with your list because you said you're including things that you read as a kid. And I read a couple fantasy books as a child, but I think it's crazy that you don't have the Chronicles of Narnia on there. C.S. Lewis. I mean, I'm not even like a fantasy fan, and I was riveted by those books as a kid.
Not a fan. J.R. Tolkien blows that shit out of the water. It's just not that good.
Not even top 10 good? Like, that's where I think it's kind of silly.
No, I would think the Dark Elf trilogy blows fucking Narnia out of the water. Fucking talking king lion? Get the fuck out of here.
Jeez,
I mean,
Chris,
I don't think that you can say that, considering that you have a leper rapist into a dark elf into some other dragon shenanigans. And then that gives me to the next point, which is just a lie. You have changed your mind because you think it's cool to do it. You don't have a Song of Ice and Fire on there. You devoured those Game of Thrones books. This is bullshit.
Here's my beef, Gail. I saw this coming. Look, he didn't finish the series. This is for completed works, okay? And he's never going to finish the series. This is what's going to happen. George R.R. Martin's going to fucking die, and they're going to bring in some jobber to write the rest of the books. And guess what? We all know how it ends, just like the TV show did, shittily.
That's not a
By the way, this just occurred to me. These are not his top 10 books. These are 10 series. He's read a slew of these books, all within each one singular book. This is insanity.
We'd have to read like 400 books to finish his.
Look, if you take all the series, yes, there's a ton of books on this list. But look, they should all be read. I mean, they're the complete works of these individuals, and they're very riveting.
Chris, please watch this independent film called Gentlemen Broncos. I think it's on Amazon Prime. Earl, if you will, look to see where it's streaming. And it's about people who all come together, write these kind of books. And there's one guy who's like who actually has produced a bunch of these books, and it's as embarrassing as fucking Chris's list. Jennifer Coolidge is in this, Sam Rockwell, and the guy from Flight of the Conchords is so fucking hilarious. I'm not going to say it's even a good movie. It's very uneven and weird, but it's Chris right now. They fucking take this shit seriously.
I can't wait to see it. This is right up my alley. My fantasy alley.
Earl, let me know where it's streaming.
Okay.
Okay. I'll tell you. I mean, he feeds this show at all times from a conversational point of view. He's the best. All right. Chris's list is up on our social media. I can't read it, so I'm going to probably ask you to type it up for people who can. But this is my favorite comment. This is from C. Styles, and says that this is Chris's top 10 rape fantasies.
It's not. These are not rape fantasies. There is one sexual assault in one of these books, yes, in the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant the Unbeliever, but that it adds layers to the character.
All right, here's one. I hope I'm saying this. Have we not brought up Terry Pratchett? From Mitch has to say that.
Terry Pratchett. Yes, that's the Discworld series. I mean, it tries to do comedy and fantasy, and it's not for me. I mean, I've read some of the books. There's a ton of them. It's very beloved, but I'm just not a fan of it.
I don't even know where to fucking begin with this. I don't know where to begin. I can't. This is the thing about Chris Stanley. He's also a real New York street guy. This is why we could never fucking figure him out.
Ron, let me help you. You can figure it out by starting at number 10, going all the way to number 1. I mean, I think you'll enjoy a lot of it, if not
Chris,
all.
I'd rather you gave me your top 10 Rush albums. It would be easier for me to make it through that.
Faster.
It'd take a lot less time.
I don't know. I'd be screaming the whole time, like when Juju rides around on her scooter and she just yells.